The wind whistled, blowing up the forms on the ground from time to time. The recruitment center of college was full of forms, and the people who attended the job fair had almost all left. There was still a figure walking back and forth among the forms on the ground. "Oh, it's really a rip-off. Nothing is suitable," Fangling said as he walked with several of his resumes, with a helpless and dissatisfied expression on his face. "Indeed, I studied for more than 10 years. In the end, I studied a philosophy major that I was not very interested in. I didn't pay attention to the certification before. As a result, I encountered many setbacks in finding a job after graduation. Employers either wanted this or that. It was really a headache. Really, no matter how much effort young people make for their future, they are often in a state of not being able to make a comeback. There are definitely astronomical numbers of frustrated children like Fangling. However, 2 companies have accepted resumes at this job fair, and of course no one knows whether they will be hired." Fangling gently punched his chest with his fist, still feeling a little unhappy. But since he has submitted his resume, he will wait for the interview notice in 2 days. Fangling took a long and deep breath and prepared to go home again. But before leaving, he should stay here for a while to change his mood after being rejected in the past few days of applying for jobs. "Let's find a place to sit for a while," Fangling thought to himself, and looked around the nearby area. Finally, he found a public bench painted with brown paint about 100 meters away from him. Anyway, he had been walking around the job fair for a long time, so it was time to find a place to rest. Fangling walked towards the chair without saying anything. After walking for a while, he finally came to the chair. The surrounding greenery was pretty good, and he could relax looking at the trees. Fangling threw his resume on the chair, and just as he was about to do it, he suddenly froze. Fangling rubbed his eyes. There was nothing on the seat he was about to sit on, but now a very delicate bright red metal card appeared. And he continued to look, and he was indeed not dazzled. Almost in an instant, a strange card appeared here. "Too outrageous," Fangling muttered to himself as he picked up the bright red metal card. On it was written a line of words, "Marvel Universe Pass." What is this?" Fangling was surprised for a while when he saw this. The word Marvel made him feel somewhat familiar. But then something even more bizarre happened. With the bright red metal card in Fangling's hand as the center, a very strange storm rose up around Fangling. Fangling was swept up. "Oh my god, what happened?" Fangling exclaimed, and his body was almost completely out of control. He felt that the world was turned upside down for a while and he entered a space like a black hole in the storm. Fangling was in a panic, shouting. He felt a sense of rebirth flowing through his body, and even his thoughts were completely out of control. He only heard a voice in his ear. "You have entered the Marvel Universe. I don't know how much time has passed." Waves of bright sunlight hit his eyelids, and a blush passed through his eyelids to his optic nerves. Fangling opened his eyes and looked around. It turned out that he was in a flower bed. Just as he was about to stand up, he felt sore all over. At the same time, he heard the buzzing sound of car wheels passing by. However, Fangling still tried to sit up. While observing his surroundings, he suddenly found that he was in a flower bed on the side of a wide street. Fangling patted his head lightly with his hands, recalling everything. Wasn't he just? Oh, right, he entered a strange black hole in the storm formed by holding a bright red metal card. And that voice kept echoing in his mind. "You have entered the Marvel Universe. The superpower conversion eye has mutated and evolved." What is this? The Marvel Universe? Fangling slowly stood up and looked around. There was a wide street nearby, and people were walking by from time to time. However, if you look closely, these pedestrians all have European and American faces, and their height and temperament are almost exactly the same as those of Americans in some movies. Where on earth is this? And what is that bright red metal card and the black hole-like thing that was formed just now? And a sense of intuition suddenly rose from Fangling's heart. Could it be that he has traveled through time? And Marvel, it seems to be Marvel. Isn't that the world where superheroes such as Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Captain America live? Could it be that he had traveled through time? As a young man, Fangling loved to read a lot of science fiction. But the travel through time in science fiction actually happened to him. Fangling tried hard to recall everything about himself, and then looked around. This street and this environment could be said to be that he was indeed in the United States. No! How can I be sure that I have traveled through time so easily? Wake up! Fangling rushed and punched himself frantically, but there was no other change except for the pain. It's true, this is not a dream, Fangling said in surprise. Fangling looked around. His heart was beating fast. He had no ability to make a living in this world, and he might not be able to communicate with the other side in the language, which was very troublesome. Now that I have traveled through time, how can I survive here? Fang Long covered his head with his hands, and said with a sad face. You finally woke up. A hoarse voice came from behind Fang Long. Fang Long turned his head and saw a ragged, bearded middle-aged man staring at him blankly. The first impression of this person was that he was probably a beggar. Fang Long also reacted and said to the other party, Oh. Uncle. May I ask who you are? The other party said casually in a hoarse voice, Hi, did you just wake up? I came here to rest this morning and found that there was an extra person here. It's you. Fang Long suddenly felt happy for a while. He could actually understand what the other person said, and his understanding level was almost the same as his mother tongue. At least there was no big problem in communication. He could use him to get some information. Fang Long looked at the middle-aged man with a beard and asked, Well, uncle. Excuse me, where is this? Which country is this specifically? As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man's face was full of strange expressions, as if he had seen an alien. He glanced at Fang Long with strange eyes and said in a hoarse voice, You must have been drunk and passed out here, right? Are you still not fully sober? This is New York. If it is New York, what other country can it be? Of course it is the United States. 3-year-old children on the street know this. Besides, aren't you afraid of being robbed sleeping in the park at night? I am a beggar, and I am not afraid of being patronized. The police in New York are too limited, and that vigilante called Spider-Man can't catch every thief. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Long opened his mouth wide and looked at the middle-aged beggar in surprise. You just mentioned Spider-Man. Uncle, why did you mention Spider-Man? Isn't he the vigilante praised by many New Yorkers? He wears a weird red and blue ties every day, and has silk in his hands. Come to think of it, I should have seen him hanging around here to catch thieves a few days ago. Fang Long couldn't close his mouth this time. This middle-aged beggar talked about these things very clearly, and his expression was very natural, without any falsehood. As expected, there is Spider-Man. Fang Long recovered from his surprise and asked, Uncle, has there ever been a man named Tony Stark in New York? The beggar uncle frowned and explained as if he was looking at an ignorant child, Isn't that Iron Man? He eats, drinks, plays and makes trouble every day and calls himself a hero. If you go to the commercial streets more often, you will see his promotional videos and advertisements on many big screens. As expected, there is Iron Man. Now Fang Long can confirm that he has really arrived in the Marvel world. But the problem is that how to survive here. Uncle, I'm leaving first. Fang Long said goodbye to the beggar uncle and continued to walk along the sidewalk beside the road. While walking, Fang Long complained, That stupid Marvel Universe pass made me come to this Marvel world without knowing why. Fang Long looked at the buildings on both sides of the street with lifeless eyes. In these lifeless days, the words The Daily Bugle on the building attracted Fang Long's attention. The Daily Bugle? I seem to have heard of it somewhere. Fang Long suddenly felt a little strange. Then Fang Long's eyes shifted to the bulletin board in front of the building. There were some hot newspapers and magazines on the bulletin board. Some of them were carrying the headlines of Spider-Man. Fang Long frowned, looking at the newspapers on the bulletin board and thinking. The Daily Bugle. Spider-Man. That's right. Fang Long suddenly remembered that Spider-Man Peter Parker worked at the Daily Bugle, and that the newspaper owner Jameson, who was complained about, was his boss. Fang Ling's eyes were immediately filled with excitement, and he walked towards the gate of the Daily Bugle. In this excitement, he was a little too excited, and ended up bumping into someone. Oh, sorry. Fang Long apologized. It's okay. A handsome boy with a bookish air replied. Fang Long was about to continue walking into the newspaper building when a voice said, Peter Parker, it's you again. You're not coming to me with some Spider-Man photos again, are you? Fang Long was stunned when he heard the voice and turned his head to look to the side. The speaker was a middle-aged man holding a cigar and a briefcase, and the person he was talking to was the boy he had just accidentally bumped into. This person turned out to be Peter Parker. Not only did he travel to Marvel, but he also bumped into Peter Parker. Fang Long stared at Peter Parker, who was talking to the middle-aged man, but suddenly he felt a pain in his eyes. Fang Long suddenly felt a strange feeling in his eyes. His subconscious seemed to be telling him something deep inside. A voice in his subconscious echoed in his mind, the body has mutated, and the eyes have evolved into superpower conversion eyes. They can see through and convert the other person's superpower. Then Fang Ling, who was looking at Peter Parker, suddenly felt a change in his vision. From his vision, he could see a powerful force emanating from Peter Parker's body. That force was vaguely present in Peter Parker's body. And a voice appeared in his consciousness. The superpower has been seen, The other party's superpower is as follows. Super strength, spider agility, spider adhesion, and spider senses can be transferred to your body as appropriate. Now the body can accommodate three abilities. Fang Long felt a soreness in his eyes, and his head was buzzing and dizzy. Fang Long hurriedly ran to a bench on the side of the road and sat down. He rubbed his eyes hard. The voice in his subconscious mind sounded again. The other party's superpowers have been discovered. You can use the conversion eye to transfer the superpowers to your body. Fang Long frowned. What was going on? The superpower conversion eye. Transfer the other party's superpowers to your body. Fang Long let it go, and found that his eyes seemed to still retain the scene when he observed Peter Parker at that time. The powerful power contained in his body. He subconsciously chose super strength, spider sense and spider agility, and then a feeling of rebirth spread from the eyes to the whole body. The muscles and even bones of the whole body were changing. A tingling feeling as if the body tissues were growing rapidly filled Fang Ling's whole body. Fang Long touched his head and regained consciousness. But suddenly he found that the noises around him were much louder and increased a lot. Looking around with his eyes, his vision became extremely clear. And some flying insects that would not be noticed at all were also clearly visible. Fang Long felt a fluctuating air flow behind him. He turned around and saw that there were several people walking towards him from more than 10 meters away. Suddenly, a fragrance seemed to be in front of him. Looking around, there was a hot dog stand across the street. When did my vision, hearing, and sense of smell become so strong? Fang looked around, listened, smelled, and felt the surroundings with a puzzled look. But in connection with the various situations just now, after looking at Peter Parker, he had such a reaction for a while. And the superpower conversion eye that kept talking in his subconscious mind, plus the abilities that he had subconsciously transformed just now. Fang Long understood that he had gained a very powerful ability after traveling to this world. His eyes had mutated and evolved into superpower conversion eyes. He could see through and convert the other person's superpowers into his own. He now had the abilities of Peter Parker. I actually converted Spider-Man's abilities. Fang Long was immediately surprised and delighted. He actually had a pair of eyes that could convert the other person's superpowers. This was even happier than becoming a stock god or winning a billionaire in the lottery. Just now, I saw that Peter Parker had 4 superpowers. Just now, I subconsciously switched to super strength and spider sense. My senses became so strong, it seems that it was the effect of the spider sense. Then what about spider power? Fang Long thought of this, stood up, and excitedly grabbed the bench where he had just sat. The bench was shaking violently. Originally, this kind of public bench was connected to the ground with cement and steel bars. But with a click, the bench was pulled up by Fang Long. Ha, it's true. The power of Spider-Man. Fang Long looked at the bench that was pulled up from the ground, with an extremely surprised expression on his face. With this pair of superpower conversion eyes, it means that he has the capital to survive in this Marvel world. This pair of eyes can actually see through and copy and convert the other party's superpowers. This is simply a perverted ability. But Fang Long was happy, and he thought of Peter Parker again. It was a good thing that he met him, otherwise he would not have known that his eyes would have such a capability. If he could make friends with Peter Parker, it would be very beneficial for Fang Long to survive and develop in this Marvel world. Where did Peter Parker go? Fang Long hurriedly walked towards the entrance of the Daily Bugle building. But he could not find any trace of Peter Parker. Thinking of the conversation between Peter Parker and that person just now, Fang Long walked into the building again. He asked a blonde staff member for information. Hello, does Peter Parker work here? Fang Long asked politely. The blonde beauty thought for a moment and said, Peter Parker. Is he the boy who often comes to us to submit photos? If I remember correctly, he just got on the elevator with President Jameson. President Jameson usually handles affairs in the president's office on the 7th floor. They should be there. Thank you. Fang Long thanked him and hurried towards the elevator. He quickly went up to the 7th floor and saw a room with the words President's Office on the door. Next to the door was a glass wall, and 2 people could be seen talking behind the desk. The one with his back to the wall was Peter Parker, and the middle-aged man with a cigar in his mouth was the one opposite him. On the table was a business card with the words Now Jameson. He was Now Jameson, the president of the Daily Bugle. Fang Long was waiting outside the door, waiting for Peter Parker to come out so that he could get in touch with him. Meanwhile, in the office, Jameson was smoking a cigar while looking at Peter Parker. Peter smiled and said, President Jameson, take a look at these photos first. He then handed over a dozen photos to him. Jameson took the photos and looked at them, quickly scanning the contents of the photos. Then he put the photos on the table and took the cigar out of his mouth with one hand. Why, you only take these Spider-Man photos? Jameson said while frowning. Peter pursed his lips, looking a little helpless. President, last time I took some warm scenes about New York. But you said that kind of photos can't produce a sensational effect. Jameson looked at the photos and said, there's nothing I can do. It seems like you're only suited to taking photos like this. Also, many of the shots here are too exaggerated, which makes people feel fake. Who has the opportunity to take such close-up photos of Spider-Man every day, and Spider-Man always poses deliberately? Maybe someone will think it's a software synthesis. Peter nodded, but there was a secret that Jameson and the newspaper readers would never guess. The photographer and the subject of the photo were actually the same person. Okay, Peter. I can give you $200 for these photos. As he spoke, President Jameson took out his wallet to withdraw money. Peter hurriedly said, these are too little. I have always insisted on delivering photos to the Daily Bugle. This time the amount is so little, I am afraid I will consider other newspapers. President Jameson looked at Peter and then glanced at the photos. No matter what, Spider-Man's photos still have a certain value. After all, this vigilante is still quite popular in New York. Generally, as long as newspapers have something to do with him, they will definitely have no problem making a profit. Okay, I'll give you $100. Take it. Jameson took out 3 green $100 bills and handed them to Peter. Peter Parker took the money and walked out of the office. He noticed a man with black eyes, black hair and an oriental face staring at him. This man was Fang Long. Hi, hello. Is this Peter Parker? Fang Long spoke first. Peter recognized this man as the one he bumped into downstairs just now. Oh, exactly. What's the matter? Peter Parker looked at Fang Long and asked. Fang Long looked at Peter Parker and began to observe him more carefully. Peter Parker was quite handsome and cute. His temperament was not ostentatious, even a little immature. But he gave people a sense of truth and power in silence. There are many superheroes in the Marvel world, and Spider-Man Peter Parker is undoubtedly a youthful hero. He is a very distinctive hero in the Marvel world. Since there is a chance to make friends with Spider-Man, why not do it? But how to get in touch with him? It's obviously difficult to do it out of nowhere. But I might as well give him a heads up and force him to make friends with me. Thinking of this, Fang Long had a few good ideas in his mind. Fang Long smiled at Peter Parker. That's good, that's good. My name is Fang Ling. Please take care of me. And Peter, you must know Spider-Man, right? Peter Parker looked at Fang Long with a strange expression, but soon regained his composure. Because when the Daily Bugle published photos, the photographer's name was signed. Many issues of the daily newspaper related to Spider-Man were taken by Peter. In the past, someone also asked him how he took those realistic and exaggerated photos. This time, it would probably be the same. But he would never have expected what Fang Long would say next. Well, sir, do you want to ask Spider-Man? I'm lucky and I took a few more photos of him. But I don't know much more than the average New Yorker. Peter said to Fang Long. Fang Long looked at Peter Parker and thought that since he had found Peter Parker, he should just say it straight to the point. It would shock the other party and make it easier for him to establish a relationship with the other party. Fang Long smiled slightly, and quickly looked at the passers-by around him. He lowered his voice and said to Peter, no, you know Spider-Man very well. Because Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Immediately, Peter Parker's expression became extremely interesting. Confused, stiff, and incredible, it was indescribable, and his pair of cute blue eyes were wide open, as if he had never been so surprised in his life. Peter's expression softened a bit, and he said, are you kidding? Fang Long replied calmly, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And don't forget the motto that with great responsibility comes great power. Peter's face became serious. He quickly scanned the area, patted Fang Ling on the back and said, come here. Fang Ling's eyes revealed a kind of joyful excitement. Spider-Man took the bait. Spider-Man and Fang Ling walked a few dozen steps and then came to a remote corner of the building. Fang Ling saw Peter Parker looking at him seriously. Fang Ling knew very well that Peter Parker would never allow his true identity as Spider-Man to be announced. If he said it directly, it would force the other party to communicate with him. Otherwise, it would be so difficult for two strangers to establish a relationship. Peter looked at Fang Ling, who was silent with a serious face, and said, since you came to me, you must have some purpose. But what you said just now was really not a joke. Fang Ling smiled slightly and said, don't be so serious. I just want to make friends with you. Peter's serious expression relaxed a little, but the doubtful look in his eyes seemed to exude a look of disbelief. Peter asked, just make friends? Is it that simple? Fang Ling also saw what Peter meant, and said in a somewhat sincere tone, don't worry, I have no bad intentions other than wanting to make friends with you. Looking at Fang Ling, Peter took a deep breath and continued, "Really, you want to make friends with me? But how do you know Peter Parker is Spider-Man?" With a slight smile, Fang Long said jokingly, "Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Is there any need to explain? And he is also a hero who insists that with great power comes great responsibility." Peter saw that he could not get much information, so he continued, "Anyway, if you want to know, then just pretend that it never existed. Spider-Man is Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is Peter Parker. Got it?" Fang Long smiled and nodded. "Don't worry, since we want to be friends, I am definitely not the kind of person who would betray my friend's secrets." "Why do you want me to be your friend?" Peter asked. Fang Long smiled, and then said with a somewhat admiring expression, "Because Spider-Man is the guardian of New York and everyone's good neighbor. He is a kind and great hero. It is absolutely my dream to be able to make friends with such a hero." "Well, Spider-Man, can we be friends?" Peter looked at Fang Long. Not only did he know that he was Spider-Man, but he also wanted to make friends with him. But since he knew his identity, he couldn't get away from it. "Don't worry, I'm definitely your friend. Anyone in New York who doesn't do bad things is Spider-Man's friend," Peter said in a slow tone. Fang Long looked at Peter and immediately felt that his behavior was too rash. After all, many people would not easily accept a friend who suddenly appeared. "Hey, no matter what, we are destined to meet. I still have things to do, so I have to go. However, please don't tell others what you said before. Remember, Spider-Man has absolutely nothing to do with Peter Parker," Peter added. Fang Long nodded and said seriously, "Don't worry, my friend. I will keep it a secret." Peter Parker left quickly after he finished speaking. Fang Long also took a deep breath. No matter what, he and Spider-Man definitely had a connection. Of course, if he wanted to really make himself and Spider-Man friends, he had to find a way to have more interactions. What needs to be solved most right now is how to make a living. With this superpower conversion I should use it to live in this world. I used the superpower conversion to convert 3 superpowers of Spider-Man before. Since this is the case, I will try to use these superpowers to find a way to survive." Fang Long left the newspaper building and walked on the street again. While walking, Fang Long was thinking about what to do with these superpowers. "No matter what, I will continue to familiarize myself with the abilities I transferred from Spider-Man." Before the transformation was triggered, a total of 3 abilities were transformed. Super strength is needless to say. I have already tried it preliminarily. Spider sense is also on my body, and my senses have been greatly enhanced, but I haven't felt spider agility obviously. However, Fang Long believes that these abilities need more specific training to become familiar. What's more, he has this pair of superpower conversion eyes, so he won't have to worry about not having superpowers in the future. As long as he meets a hero, he can consider converting the other person's superpowers. Fang Long started running, and indeed found that his body's agility had increased a lot. His limbs also became more coordinated. It's great to have superpowers, Fang Long thought to himself. But then Fang Long felt his stomach growling again. It turned out that he was hungry. Fang Long saw a steak restaurant on the street again. He really wanted to go in and order some authentic American grilled steaks to enjoy. But no matter how he thought about it, no one would want the RMB in his pocket. After being transported to this world by that pass, although he had the superpower of transformation eyes, he lacked even some initial funds. Now Fang Long really has special skills, but lacks the basic conditions for survival. Thinking about it now, he really feels a little helpless. Suddenly, a series of subtle screams reached Fang Ling's ears. Fang Long stopped and listened carefully. Because his spider sense ability greatly enhanced his senses, many sounds that he could not hear normally could now be heard. This sound was a woman's scream, and the sound was extremely terrifying. And there was obviously another childish voice that filled the air. Fang Long squatted down and listened carefully. The woman's voice seemed to be begging. "Let's go see what's going on." Fang Long was a little curious. He listened carefully and ran towards the place where the sound came from using the super hearing given by his spider sense. Fang Long ran for a while and came to an alley near a residential building. The woman's screams were getting louder and louder, mixed with the crying of a boy. Fang Long slowed down his pace and started moving towards the source of the sound. Then he heard a mixture of rude curses, crying and screaming. After walking behind the wall, Fang Long slowly looked towards the source of the sound. He saw 3 masked men robbing a woman and a little boy with guns. The 3 robbers were all wearing black hoods. One of the tall robbers was holding a shotgun, while the other 2 shorter robbers were holding pistols. The 3 black muzzles were pointed at the woman and the little boy leaning against the wall. The woman looked terrified and seemed to be begging at the robbers, while the little boy was crying out of fear. "Shit! I'll kill you if you cry." One of the robbers grabbed the boy's collar and shouted, while the woman quickly hugged the boy and begged for mercy. The robber swung his gun and hit the woman's forehead hard, and blood dripped from her forehead. The robber also took the opportunity to drag the boy over. The big robber in the middle asked another robber beside him, "Count how much money is in her suitcase." The robber picked up a suitcase, which was obviously stolen from the woman. The robber opened the suitcase and counted the money and valuables inside. He nodded with satisfaction while counting. This time the profit is not bad. This money plus the things must be at least tens of thousands of dollars. The big man looked at the injured woman with a smug look and said, "Humph. I guess that this woman would have something valuable." The little boy cried again. After hearing this, the tall robber angrily said to the robber who grabbed the child, "Humph. This little beast is so annoying. You might as well just shoot this little beast in the arm twice." The robber named Carl hit the boy's head with a pistol target, and then aimed the pistol at the boy's arm. The woman cried out, "No, I've given you all the money and things. He's just a child. Go to hell, bitch." The tall robber kicked the woman away. Fang Lung saw all this and thought, a few scumbags. But they can be used as a training ground for me. It just so happened that he needed to further test the superpowers he had acquired from Spider-Man, so he might as well practice on these three robbers. However, looking at the guns in the robbers' hands, Fang Lung's eyes still condensed slightly. After all, although he had acquired three superpowers, he was still a human being, and if he wanted to deal with them, he certainly couldn't just attack them directly. Fang Lung glanced at the bricks on the ground nearby and thought, got it. The robber who was holding the little boy was holding his gun against the boy's right arm, saying fiercely, "You little brat, I'll make you cry and scream." At the same time, his pistol was fully loaded and the trigger was almost pulled. Suddenly, a brick was thrown at high speed and hit the back of the robber's head heavily. "Ah!" After a scream, the man fainted on the ground like a sandbag. The tall robber quickly picked up the shotgun, looked around and said fiercely, "Who is it?" Another robber said, "Boss Matt." Carl was knocked down. The tall robber looked around vigilantly, but did not see any figure. At this moment, Fang Lung was sitting behind a box nearby, calmly observing the robbers' movements. After all, the robbers had guns, so he had to be cautious. Now, because of the spider senses, his senses were super strong, and he basically had some ability to identify the location by hearing sounds. Fortunately, there were some boxes in this alley, so he could use them to hide. Just now Fang Lung picked up a brick and threw it at the other party. He didn't expect that the force was still so strong even though he was dozens of meters away. He directly knocked the robber down. Next, he dealt with the robber with the suitcase, and then dealt with the tall man with the shotgun. Fang Lung picked up two more bricks from the ground, and smiled slightly. Just let these two have a taste of what making a thing to the east and attacking in the west means. Bam! With a loud noise, Fang Lung quickly threw the brick towards the wall very close to the robbers. The remaining two robbers were like frightened birds, shooting wildly. Now is the time. Fang Lung quickly stepped forward and threw another brick at the robber carrying the suitcase. Ouch! With a sound, the robber's arm holding the gun was hit, and his eyes widened immediately. He was lying on the ground holding his arm in pain. Only the tall robber was left, shooting wildly around in shock and anger. Shotguns hit the surrounding walls or boxes in the streets. Fang Lung hid behind a box and waited for an opportunity. After a while of gunfire, only the sound of triggers could be heard. The tall robber looked at the shotgun in his hand and found that the ammunition had been used up. This is a good opportunity. Fang Lung rushed out and smashed the tall robber with a brick. Bam! With a loud bang, the brick hit the robber's chest and the tall robber was knocked to the ground. Fang Lung rushed out quickly, and after more than 10 steps, he rushed to the injured robber. He immediately punched the robber with the injured arm in the head. The robber collapsed to the ground and fainted. Fang Lung turned his head again, and the tall robber, who was leading the group, got up again. As expected, robbers were still robbers, and they were still quite fierce and durable. "Hey! Bastard, come and fight me!" Fang Lung scolded while rushing to the tall robber and punched him in the face. This punch made the tall robber see stars. The tall robber was really enraged this time, and he pulled out a steel knife from his waist and stabbed at Fang Lung. Fang Lung dodged the opponent's attack, but fortunately, he had the help of spider agility and spider senses. Otherwise it would have been impossible to dodge at such a close distance. The tall robber roared, "Where did you come from, you brat?" At the same time, he stabbed at Fang Lung with the steel knife in his hand, but Fang Lung dodged it again. Fang Lung clenched his fists. "It's my turn now." Then he punched the tall man on the chin. Bam! The punch was so powerful that the tall man was knocked several meters away and fell to the ground unconscious. Looking at the three robbers who were knocked down on the ground, Fang Lung took a breath. The battle just now was not without danger. Fortunately, he had the help of the 3 superpowers he got from Spider-Man to get rid of these robbers. Thank you. I really don't know how to thank you. A voice came from behind Fang Long. Fang Long turned around and saw the woman hugging the little boy and thanking him. Looking at the grateful expression on the woman's face, Fang Long said casually, "Hey, what's the big deal? I hate rogue robbers the most." The woman quickly stroked the little boy in her arms and said, "Jack, why don't you thank this big brother?" The little boy looked at Fang Long with his cute big eyes and said, "Big brother, thank you." Fang Long smiled slightly and suddenly felt a little proud. He didn't expect that he would become a hero by chance. But then he looked at the 3 robbers who were knocked down on the ground around him, thinking that the fight with them just now had caused gunfire, and the police might be back soon. Fang Long didn't want to cause trouble. "Well, I think I need to leave. I have something urgent to do, so I'll leave first," Fang Long said to the woman and the little boy named Jack. The woman looked at Fang Long and said, "Please wait a moment." Then she walked to the suitcase that was just taken by the robbers, opened it and counted the things inside. Then she walked in front of Fang Long and handed a dozen banknotes to him with both hands. Fang Long glanced at them and saw that they were all $100 bills. "Sir, my name is Elizabeth. I do stock business at the New York Stock Exchange. This time you helped us, and this is just a small thank you. Please accept it anyway. This is a thank you for your righteous actions," the woman said to Fang Long pleadingly. Fang Long looked at the stack of $100 bills, then at the pleading expression on the woman's face, and his stomach growled. He thought that he also needed some funds, and since he had done something righteous today, it was reasonable to accept some gratitude. Okay, Fang Long smiled slightly, and seeing that it was hard to refuse, he took the US dollars in his hand. Fang Long was still quite happy, and wanted to find a steakhouse to eat a feast. However, Fang Long thought of the 3 robbers who were knocked down on the ground. He ran to them and searched them. A lot of money was found from the 3 robbers. Anyway, these are ill-gotten gains, just in time to help me solve my current predicament, Fang Long thought to himself while putting the money into his pocket. After saying goodbye to the woman and the little boy, Fang Long hurried to the street and found a restaurant called Richard's Grilled Steak. He went in and ordered 3 exquisite grilled steaks. The authentic American grilled steaks were fragrant, and Fang Long was hungry, so he ate them with big mouthfuls. Fighting the robbers just now not only gave him some practice, but also brought him considerable rewards. Now, he can gain a foothold in this Marvel world and start to develop. When thinking of this, Fang Ling's heart can be said to be constantly excited. After feasting, Fang Long took the US dollars he got and searched in New York City. But to gain a foothold in this world, he must have a place to live. Fang Long found a cheap apartment called Tom's House in Queens and rented it for $600 a month. The woman named Elizabeth gave him $10,000 US as a thank you, and he got about $9,000 US from the 3 robbers who were knocked down. This nearly $20,000 US was enough for Fang Ling to live here for a while. No matter what, he finally settled down in New York. The next step is to think about how to make a big splash in this Marvel world. But while getting familiar with it, he also needs to take a rest. After a few days of rest, Fang Long sat in front of the computer in his apartment. After a few days of rest, Fang Long had settled down in New York and got used to life here. He also bought some daily necessities. Fang Long looked at the trademark under the computer from time to time, and there was the word Stark. It seems that Tony Stark is really doing well. Even this computer was made by his company. Fang Long sighed while checking the information. Fang Long was mainly targeting Spider-Man and Iron Man, and decided to start with these 2 heroes as soon as possible. In this Marvel world, one must try to get to know more heroes. What about Captain America, Black Widow, Thor, etc.? Fang Long was determined to call them sooner or later. Moreover, his superpower conversion eyes must find those heroes to convert their superpowers for his own use. This also means that he has an inseparable relationship with the heroes. On the computer screen, information about Iron Man was constantly searched out. All of them were news about billionaire Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries, etc. Even the computer he was using now was from Stark Industries, which showed that Stark Industries' economic and technological influence in this world was definitely not exaggerated. Fang Long couldn't help but sigh at the high frequency of Stark search terms on Google. After all, he was a superhero who directly disclosed his private identity. Moreover, Stark was cynical and a genius who was good at invention. He attracted the attention of many American media and the public. Fang Long continued to scan the information related to Tony Stark. Iron Man Tony Stark coordinates the relationship between the East and the West. Iron Man is on the cover of Time magazine. Iron Man strengthens cooperation with the government. However, looking at this information related to Iron Man, Fang Long also felt some problems. After all, Iron Man is a superhero and rich man who has been hanging out in the upper class for a long time. It may not be so easy to get close to him. But Spider-Man is different. Little Spider Peter Parker is different from Iron Man, a bachelor. Spider-Man is still the type of person who saves the world with a little help. Wearing Spider-Man's uniform makes him a hero in New York. Peter Parker is just a bit of a nude in some ways. And Fang Long had already met Peter Parker. Of course, Fang Ling's behavior of trying to date him right away was a bit rash. I'd better continue to invest in Spider-Man. Fang Long made up his mind. Then he felt a little thirsty in his throat, so he took a box of milk from the table and drank it with a straw. Well, this milk tastes pretty good. Fang Long drank the milk and looked at the packaging on the milk box. The packaging showed Osborne Industrial Biotechnology, improved hybrid cows, rich in protein and minerals. Osborne Industries. Fang Long looked at the explanation on the milk carton and seemed to remember something. Osborne, Norman Osborn. Fang Long remembered that Osborne Industries was the company of Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. And the Green Goblin was Spider-Man's biggest enemy. If he remembered correctly, many of Spider-Man's enemies were born because of their connection with Osborne Industries. Fang Long was using his computer to search for information about Osborne Industries. Like Stark Industries, Osborne Industries' headquarters was also located in New York, and its business scope focused on the fields of biotechnology and military industry. Stark Industries, on the other hand, was in the electronics, energy, and military industries. It seemed that Osborne Industries was quite strong in biotechnology. Stark Industries, on the other hand, focused on electronic technology. But now I am mainly trying to find a way to become friends with Spider-Man, so I still pay attention to some trends about Spider-Man and Osborne Industries. I also need to properly use my superpower conversion eye to obtain other heroes' superpowers. The ability is too strong. I can stand firm now because I converted Spider-Man's 3 superpowers. I have thought about whether this superpower conversion eye can be further strengthened, or whether some stronger superpowers can be transferred to my body. And these need further exploration to find out. The most effective thing to do now is to get in touch with superheroes more often and transform more superpowers from them. Fang Long did it right away. He gained experience from fighting criminals that time. He was determined to make being a hero a way of life, and now he could make a living by fighting criminals. By the way, he could also seize the criminals' money as supplies. Fang Long did what he said. He checked the time on his computer. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Criminals were ready to try at this time. It was time for Fang Long to strike. Fang Long left the apartment, walked to the street, waved, and finally stopped a taxi. "Sir, where are you going?" The middle-aged taxi driver with a big beard asked Fang Long. "It's the Fairlane neighborhood in Queens," Fang Long answered, sitting in the back seat of the taxi. The taxi driver looked strange and said to Fang Long, "Sir, are you talking about the Fairlane neighborhood? The security there is quite bad. There was a shooting incident there in the news a few days ago." Fang Long nodded and said, "Okay, there's no need to go too deep. Just get off near the residential area." The taxi driver thought for a moment and said, "Well, okay, sir." The taxi drove towards the destination, while Fang Long admired the scenery outside. New York is indeed very grand. After all, it is the largest city in the United States. In such a big city, people's pace of life is very fast. Fashionably dressed men and women in suits walk quickly on the streets. The buildings on both sides of the street are high-end and majestic, with various hotels, shopping malls, and office buildings standing tall. New York is also a gathering place for elites. It has produced a number of celebrities, including the great scientist Oppenheimer, Michael Jordan, the cynical genius and rich man Tony Stark, and of course heroes like Spider-Man. However, even the most developed cities have their drawbacks. New York is also known for its high crime rate. Robbery, theft, and murder are commonplace. Fang Long was going to the Fairlane neighborhood, a well-known high-crime area in Queens. Murders and robberies had occurred there recently. The taxi driver was terrified that Fang Long was going to the Fairlane neighborhood because he was afraid of the frequent crimes there. New York is a big city after all, and there are traffic jams. After nearly 2 hours, he finally arrived at the Fairlane neighborhood. "Okay, here you go." Fang Long paid the fare and got off. The car stopped on a street very close to the Fairlane residential area. Fang Long put his hands in his pockets and walked towards the residential area. Fang Long also learned from the internet that the Fairlane residential area was a high-incidence crime area. So he decided to come here to fight crime and seize the criminals' money as supplies. Since I have decided to make being a hero and making friends with heroes my way of life, I will start by fighting crime. Looking at the residential area in front of me, the buildings in the Fairlane residential area are really old at first glance. The paint on the buildings has fallen off sporadically, and some buildings have cracks or broken parts. It is in sharp contrast with the bright and modern buildings in many other places in New York. This is the famous high-crime area in Queens, and even in New York. And Fang Long is going to do a lot of things here tonight. Fang Ling, wearing a jacket and casual pants, entered the residential area, with his hands in his pockets and looking around. Not only are the residential buildings in this field residential area aging, but the management is also quite chaotic. There are a lot of rags and garbage on the ground, and the street lights in the streets are also very old, emitting dim light, and from time to time there are malfunctioning lights that flicker on and off alternately. After walking for a while, he looked at his watch. It was almost 7 o'clock in the evening. The sun had already set, and the lighting here was not very good, so it was still relatively dark. However, Fang Longlong did not care. His body had a spider sense that greatly improved his vision. Even though it was relatively dim here, he could still see the surrounding situation quite clearly. His hearing was also very sensitive, and he could hear the surroundings clearly. He could even hear the sounds of flies and moths. However, Fang Long subconsciously filtered out those useless sounds. Although it was not safe here, there were still some people active at night. In the streets of the residential area, Fang Long could see some men and women in slutty clothes actively making love from time to time. The men and women making love were fully focused, as if there was no one around them. After walking for a while, he gradually felt bored. Fang Long came to an old building, looked around, walked in, and walked up the stairs from the first floor. Soon Fang Long reached the roof of the 6th floor. On the roof, Fang Long looked at the residential buildings in this area. The residential areas in this area are of different heights, with small buildings of 2 or 3 floors and old apartments of up to dozens of floors. With the help of his spider sense, Fang Long can hear the sounds in this area very clearly. While sitting on the roof, he waited for a crime to happen and waited for the opportunity to take action. At the same time, a nimble figure was moving through the residential area. He was very agile, and the weak light could occasionally shine on him. He was wearing a tight red and blue outfit. The figure waved his long arms, and a strong adhesive liquid shot out straight, sticking to the wall of the building, and then quickly condensed into a special material comparable to a cable. Then the figure grabbed the cable with both hands and swung forward. The agile figure swung to another place like a swing. Fang Long was a little sleepy after waiting for a while, so he just thought about taking a nap. But something in the dark suddenly caught his attention. It was a figure swinging in the night sky. No, if you look closely, the figure seemed to be swinging on a swing. Fang Long squinted his eyes and focused his vision. Because his spider sense greatly enhanced his vision, he could see the outline of the figure more clearly if he looked carefully. Although the light was very dim at night, one could still see the outline of a figure. It was a figure wearing a tights. Fang Ling's face immediately showed an excited expression. I really didn't expect to meet him here again. Okay, Spider-Man. Here I come. Fang Long observed the approximate location where Spider-Man swung to, and immediately went down from the roof and ran towards the target. I just met Peter Parker when I came here, and this time I met Spider-Man again. I have to say that it is fate to follow Spider-Man. I was excited while running. This time I must make Spider-Man like me. If I can help him, then Spider-Man will definitely be happier. Fang Long soon arrived at the place where Spider-Man swung to. It was near a supermarket in a residential area. But Spider-Man was nowhere to be seen. Strange, where did he go? Hearing a clang, Fang Long immediately felt that something had happened in the supermarket. He looked towards the supermarket. He saw 2 robbers, one fat and one thin, walking out with guns and carrying things. Oh, they are robbers. Fang Long thought. He saw 2 vicious robbers looking around for a way to escape. Suddenly, a voice rang out, Hey! What are you 2 little thieves doing? The 2 robbers were also stunned for a moment, and then looked around. Not far away, Fang Long saw a figure suddenly swinging above them. The figure let go of the rope-like thing in his hand and landed on the ground very lightly and flexibly. The 2 robbers were shocked by this sudden strange man. Fang Ling, who was not far away, saw that this man was wearing a slim-fitting red and blue ties, and it was wrapped all over his body. Even his head was wrapped. Only 2 black lenses covered his eyes. If this isn't Spider-Man, then who is it? The 2 robbers immediately woke up from their panic and shot at Spider-Man with their pistols. After a while of bam, bam, bam gunshots, Spider-Man was seen swaying left and right, as if he was doing street dance, and he was unharmed. The 2 robbers each fired a burst of bullets, but found that none of them hit the target, and their faces were full of fear and surprise. Spider-Man said calmly, Hey, you 2 little thieves were so scared when you saw me that you couldn't even use your guns. And don't forget to touch your crotch and ask your mother if you have diapers. I'm not that scary, are you so scared? The two robbers didn't want to listen to Spider-Man's funny words. After all, there was no other explanation for how a person could dodge 2 volleys of bullets at such a close distance except that this person was not a normal person. But the robbers were still very reckless. The fat and thin robbers immediately drew their knives and slashed at Spider-Man. Spider-Man made a terrifying movement like a child and said, "Oh, so scary. Your knives are so sharp, I was scared and kept dodging. If you don't mind, then I want to compete with you in fists. Come on, keep stabbing me." I was so scared that my heart was pounding. You are all so anxious that you are gritting your teeth. Don't be anxious, your movements are too slow. Donald Duck can beat you by several blocks. Your mother should send you home to breastfeed and learn to walk. The two robbers were sweating and gritting their teeth anxiously. But they just couldn't stab Spider-Man. Fang Ling, who was watching the situation, was amused. This Spider-Man was a relatively young nerd in Peter Parker's state, but once he put on the Spider-Man suit, he was a super mouth cannon who loved to complain and make jokes. A real rap master. But Fang Ling also admired Spider-Man's use of his own abilities. To dodge the bullets just now, it was not Spider-Man's high speed, but his strong senses. Spider-Man's use of his senses was absolutely superb, using the sound and action of the opponent aiming and pulling the trigger to make predictions, so as to safely dodge the bullets. Facing 2 pistols at a distance of less than 3 meters from the opponent, dodging 2 full rounds of bullets, this was almost impossible for Fang Ling himself. Because although Fang Ling has acquired abilities including super senses through the conversion eye, he can't catch up with Spider-Man himself in the use of superpowers. Obviously Spider-Man didn't want to end this battle quickly. Fang Ling just waited and watched. Spider-Man continued to fight with the two robbers, while complaining, "Look at you two. You don't even cover your faces when you rob. Don't think that no one can stop you when you rob at night. You can't afford a headgear, or you don't know how to make a headgear. If you don't know how to make it, I'll tell you. Find a pair of women's stockings, poke 2 holes, put it on your head, and you're done." The two robbers, one fat and one thin, were panting with exhaustion. No matter how hard they stabbed Spider-Man, they could not hurt him at all. The robbers were also confused. Why did I run into such a weirdo today? Spider-Man continued to dodge and shrugged. I've played enough with you. The game is over soon. Come, try my spider silk. With one quick move, Spider-Man turned 360 degrees. With a flick of his hands, the web shooters on his wrists each shot out a dense stream of spider web material. Before the two robbers could react, 2 dense clumps of spider silk had already stuck to their faces. Although the two robbers, whose faces were stuck by the spider silk, whimpered uncomfortably. Then they pulled their hands towards their faces, but the spider silk was stuck to their faces tightly, as if it was completely stuck to their faces. Spider-Man shrugged and said jokingly, "Oh, so what? You've been trying to treat me to bullets, but now I'm treating you to spider silk. Hey, you're really too slow. No matter how fast my spider silk is, it's not as fast as bullets. You two are fighting one, and I can dodge the bullets, but you become like this when I just throw 2 pieces of spider silk at you. Is it because your shooting skills are too bad? Or is it because I shoot too accurately? Forget it, I've had enough of playing with you." Then, Spider-Man spun his legs. With 2 bends and bends, the robber was knocked to the ground. Spider-Man clapped his hands and said, "How boring. Such a little brat is still robbing." Fang Ling was watching this funny fight in the dark, thinking that it was time for him to come out. Spider-Man would be surprised to see him again. At this moment, a noisy sound of footsteps came from the darkness. More than a dozen figures ran out of the darkness, cursing. A dozen people, some holding guns, some holding steel bars and machetes, surrounded Spider-Man. A fierce and strong man, who looked like a mixed race, looked at the 2 people who were knocked down on the ground, and then looked at Spider-Man. "Ha ha, great. I was wondering why Don and the others were so clumsy and even fired a gunshot. It seems like it was your fault, huh? Looking at your outfit, are you the Spider-Man?" the sturdy man said fiercely. Spider-Man looked at the people around him through the 2 black sunglasses on his hood and said angrily, "Hey, it seems I have really come to a den of thieves. You guys are probably a gang, and one group of people split into several groups to rob and steal." Spider-Man narcissistically touched his red and blue ties and said, "Also, how did you recognize me as Spider-Man? Is it because my suit is too cool?" The guy with a pointed face and monkey cheeks in the group of robbers heard this and shouted, "Ha! Too cool. There is an idiot called Spider-Man who wears a funny circus-like costume every day and claims to be a hero. He is also regarded as a hero by some stupid citizens." Spider-Man touched his forehead with his hand and shook it off helplessly. Snap! A thick ball of spider silk shot at the face of the sharp-nosed and monkey-faced robber. Spider-Man raised his right index finger and said in a sermon, "Really, don't slander other people's reputation casually." The strong and ferocious leading robber stared at Spider-Man with his eyes and said coldly, "This area is my chum's territory. Since you beat my man, don't think it will be so easy to let this go. Brothers, come on." As soon as the strong robber, who called himself Chum, finished speaking, more than a dozen robbers attacked Spider-Man. Bullets were fired at him at high speed, but Spider-Man dodged them in advance by predicting the direction of the shooting. Except for the robbers with guns, the rest of the robbers came at Spider-Man with machetes and steel pipes. Spider-Man used flexible movements to deal with the opponents. Spider-Man didn't just sit there and wait to be beaten. With a few punches and kicks, 3 robbers collapsed to the ground with bruised faces. Spider-Man's powerful agility gave him the ability to move quickly. How could these robbers' movements match his? Fang Ling, who had been observing the battle in the dark, thought to himself, "Haha, I didn't expect Spider-Man to be so humorous when fighting." But the gang of robbers he encountered was obviously a gang. I must take the opportunity to help him at the right time. Fang Ling knew very well that if he stepped forward to help Spider-Man at this time, he would definitely increase his favorability, which would be of great benefit to promoting the development of the relationship between the two sides. However, since the other party was holding a gun, he had to attack with caution. At the same time, Spider-Man continued to fight with the robbers. After all, there were more than 10 robbers this time, so Spider-Man was a little more serious. Spider-Man relied on his adhesion ability to climb the rocks and escape. Even the straight walls were free to come and go. Although several of the robbers were not knocked down, they were directly stunned by Spider-Man's agile movements. "Hey, hey, hey! Come and catch me, do I look like Tarzan?" Spider-Man swung on the spider silk shot by the web launcher while mocking the robbers. The robbers' leader, John, immediately had fire in his eyes, gritted his teeth, and pulled out 2 pistols. The 2 guns shot at Spider-Man viciously. Spider-Man dodged and used his web shooter to shoot out spider silk to fight back. The spider silk shot by Spider-Man was different from the long and thin spider silk. It was basically in clumps and hit the target directly as a restraint. Just as the two sides were fighting, a steel pipe flew out from a dark corner and spun towards the robbers. Bang! 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 There were a series of noises, accompanied by screams, and 4 or 5 robbers were knocked to the ground. In Spider-Man's sight, an agile figure jumped out of the darkness, holding a steel pipe-like object and hitting the remaining robbers. The person who rushed out was Fang Ling. Fang Ling just found 2 discarded steel pipes nearby and threw them hard. Unexpectedly, the robbers were in a straight line, and he knocked down 4 or 5 of them directly. At this moment, the robbers were in a state of being trapped, and were immediately frightened by the steel pipe. Fang Ling took advantage of the situation and swung the steel pipe while dodging and hitting the robbers fiercely. There is a helper? Spider-Man was also a little surprised when he looked at this person who suddenly came out. But since there is a helper, he must respond. Spider-Man waved his hands. 2 more sticky spider silk shot towards the robbers. The robber leader Chang just wanted to attack Fang Ling with his 2 guns, but found that his 2 guns were blocked by 2 sticky substances. Before he could react, Fang Ling hit him with a steel pipe. Bang! Chang fell to the ground unconscious. After the attack of Spider-Man and Fang Ling, the robbers were unconscious or fell to the ground, and only the 2 robbers were still holding on. The 2 robbers looked at Fang Ling with horror. As they turned around and prepared to flee, they found a figure rushing in front of them. It was Spider-Man. "Hey! Don't run away, kid." Then he threw a few quick left hooks, and the 2 robbers fell to the ground with bruised faces. Fang Ling held the steel pipe in his hand, exhaled, and looked at Spider-Man. Spider-Man looked around and found that the robbers had been dealt with. He then became curious about this helper who suddenly appeared and came to Fang Ling. He saw that the other party had black hair and black eyes, and that appearance made Spider-Man unforgettable. Because this person was the one he met a few days ago who not only knew that Spider-Man was Peter Parker, but also wanted to make friends with him. "It's you," Spider-Man said in a surprised tone. Fang Ling smiled and threw away the steel pipe in his hand. "Well, we meet again. Isn't it, Peter?" Spider-Man's expression at the moment was very surprised and shocked, but his wonderful expression was still covered by the hood, so Fang Ling couldn't see it. Spider-Man shrugged, and then said to Fang Ling, "What a coincidence. Your name is Fang Ling, right? I met you here." Fang Ling waved his hand and smiled. "So we are destined to meet?" Spider-Man asked. "It was quite dangerous just now. Why did you help me?" Fang Ling's eyes suddenly showed some confidence. "As usual, I want to make friends with you." Spider-Man was stunned for a moment, holding his chin with one hand. At the same time, the eyes in the black eye mask were looking at Fang Ling in front of him.